Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. So I had a whole video plan that I was gonna do around the whole, flop legend conversation, which I'm still gonna do. But I kind of wanted to talk about this whole Drake and Toronto situation that's happening right now. I think that this is like a really kind of interesting um, example of, I guess you could say, fan culture. So obviously Golden State is playing Toronto in the NBA Finals. I don't have a dog in this fight. Honestly, I want to option. Well, I have a lot of feelings about organized sports, but aside from that, I don't have a dog in this fight at all. I want to option C. I really don't want Golden State to win again, personally. Like, everybody loves rooting for an underdog. But the behavior of the Toronto, their fans, and especially Drake as their like sort of global brand ambassador, has sort of left everybody with like this bad taste in their mouths. That you have people that are like rooting against the underdog, the team that has never even won, right? And people talk about something. I was on the Raptors side, but now I want Golden State to win. Like, just because what's been going on in the whole entire season. So Drake was made, not this season, like previously, Drake was made the global brand ambassador of Toronto for the Toronto Raptors. And so he sort of basically he's like the hype man. He's like the hype man of the team, right? And he like sits courtside, and he's become very well known for being an extremely boisterous fan. He's actually gotten two reprimands from the league for his sort of over-the-top behavior, just like sort of really aggressive heckling of players. And this season, and getting into like back and forth spats and exchanges and like damn near like going out on the court, And this season, that was like last season, he got one for doing that. And he got one again this season because he touched the Raptors coach. He was like giving him a shoulder massage, and he's extra. Drake is just a fucking extra individual. So last night was game 5 of the series, and it was like a very close game. Early on in the game, Kevin Durant, who's been injured previously and was out, he came back and he aggravated his old injury and he went down. And the Raptors fans started to cheer. They were cheering, they were like waving, like they were just being really like obnoxious, and a lot of people felt that it was unsportsmanlike conduct. And then Toronto ended up losing very close. They lost by 1 point. And then also today, Tuesday, this morning, some video footage was circulating around on Twitter of a Golden State fan being sucker punched not once, but twice by some Raptors fans in Canada after the game was over. And so today there's been a lot of just think pieces and a lot of talk about sort of the culture. What is the fan culture right now over in Toronto? And a lot of people feel like, and I agree with this, a lot of people feel like Toronto was like, again, like this is the underdog team. Like I used to live in Miami when Chris Bosh was playing with the Heat as part of like the Big Three, and like Bosh used to play for Toronto, and like people used to have like a little soft spot like for Toronto. Like, seemed like a nice team full of nice players, full of just people just minding their own business, and good players, like a good team, like sort of getting their shit together, and a team that you do want to root for, right? Like you want to root for the team. And now with like this just excessive heckling and this like just behavior of the fans, it's getting to the point where people feel like they're ruining their reputation, like their team reputation is being tarnished by the behavior of the fans. And I felt for a long time that like a huge sort of catalyst for a lot of how nasty and toxic and over the top the behavior has gotten has been Drake. Ever since Drake was named their global brand ambassador, which obviously was a sound business move on the behalf of Toronto, because the whole point was clearly to grow their brand and to make them sort of a bigger, more publicized, more viable team in the league. So, of course, they hired Drake, who's, like, from Toronto, who's always talking about Toronto this, six that, and associating him with the team, like, You think of Drake, you think of Toronto, you think of the Raptors. You think of Drake, you think of Toronto, you think of the Raptors. And reverse, vice versa. You think of the Raptors, you think of Toronto, you think of Drake. You know, one of the biggest artists that's out right now, having him associated in a very direct, you know, professional way with this team as a way to sort of grow their presence in the league was smart. Great business move. But again, Drake is like, well, number one, as we've talked about before, as I know I talked about it on Genius, I've talked about it in various places now at this moment, like, Drake is a wave rider. Like, Drake hops on whatever is hot. So, like, prior to becoming, like, the global brand ambassador for the Raptors, Drake was, like, a super motherfucking Golden State fucking stan. Like, he has Steph Curry and Kevin Durant's numbers tattooed on him, a grown man with the numbers of other grown men, his peers, you know, people that he's cool with in real life, tattooed on him. Always Steph Curry with the pot, you know, like, Golden State practicing in my house, all types of stuff, like a super stan. But now that he's the brand ambassador for Toronto, which would be obviously his hometown team, and now that they're in this finals series, he's just gotten way, you know, like, he's just like, Toronto, which I don't mind. Like, I'm not against that, but it's just like, Drake is that person. Again, Drake is like a wave rider. He jumps on whatever's hot. Like, I bet you if next year, if Toronto, like, washes out, he's going to be, even though he's their brand ambassador, he's going to be right back to, like, rooting for Golden State again, right? Like, bandwagon. Like, he bandwagons on everything hot. I'm sorry, like, that's not debatable to me. That just is what it is. And, like, a lot of people that bandwagon on things that are hot, they become, like, super energetic, super aggressive, super stands, like, super into it. And with Drake also getting this title of global brand ambassador and being such, you know, this huge superstar and this global figure and super recognizable with this heckling and with this fan behavior and these antics, I feel like in a lot of ways he's magnified a lot of the, because I was talking to my friend, and my friend was like, you know, like, obviously, like, drama in sports and, like, negativity in sports, unsportsmanlike conduct, people fighting, getting in fist fights, and, you know, like, Spike Lee was known in the 90s for being, like, an aggressive heckler for the Knicks and things of that nature. And I was like, but I do feel like Drake is, because he has an official title and an official position as global brand ambassador, is really magnifying a lot of the toxic fan behavior, and also making it seem like it is acceptable by the organization, right? Because, like, he's the face of the organization at this point. So, and it's kind of just like a weird line, because it's also like Drake does know these people. Like, he does know Steph Curry, he does know Kevin Durant, he does know Klay Thompson. So, like, when Drake and Klay Thompson get into an argument after a game and they going back and forth, arguing, exchanging, you know, barbs, and then fucking Klay Thompson calls Drake, you know, you a bum ass nigga, this, that, and the third. They do know each other. But since he is in a certain capacity to the brand, does that sort of send a message to the fans that that type of thing is acceptable, and it's acceptable by the league and it's acceptable by the organization, to the point that when Kevin Durant goes down with an aggregated injury that they're now saying might be a torn Achilles, which would be horrible, they feel like it's appropriate to cheer and jeer and clap and wave bye-bye, because that's the type of shit that Drake does. Because Drake, again, like, Drake is that person that, like, obviously, like, never knows when enough is enough. Like, we all know that person that just, like, love to keep the joke going. Even after you're like, you better chill, to just keep it going and going and going. And it seems like that is the spirit of, like, where this fan base is headed. And it's, like, really tarnishing their reputation in, like, as a team. So I was talking to my friend about it on Instagram, and we got into this conversation about, like, as the quote-unquote global brand ambassador, what type of responsibility does Drake have, if any, to the team, to the fans, since, you know, his position, his title is sort of as the go-between, the liaison between the team and the players that he knows, you know, and the fans, which he's technically a fan, he's not a player, you know, his position is to be the go-between between them. What is his responsibility, if he has one, to tell the fans to chill out, or to, it's sort of like Glee Club, or, you know, like cheerleaders, or, you know, like, you do have people that they play these positions that are meant to sort of guide where the, you know, the school spirit or the team spirit or whatever you want to call that, like, what direction that's going in. So and not just Drake, obviously we're talking about Drake because, like, that's the situation, but, like, do people in, you know, sort of public positions maybe have a responsibility to the public or to the fans or to whoever to say, like, this is not cool, y'all are going a little bit overboard. And also, where does this fit into the larger conversation around fan culture, around stan culture, around social media culture, around sort of mob mentality? A lot of these things that we've talked about previously on this channel in terms of sort of a critique of culture. We're just in like a really interesting time because, again, I've seen a lot of people like bring up the 90s, and I also feel like, do we want it to like get back to that level of like Malice in the Palace, like people like players fighting fans, like, because I feel like if we got to that level, like Drake would get punched in the face like by a player that he doesn't know, because he don't know motherfucking everybody in the league. And it's like, if he's talking smack and heckling so aggressively and a player fucking punches him in the face, is the player wrong? Well, I mean, I guess obviously they'd be wrong because the NBA has a code of conduct. But, you know, it's just like, where's the line? So I'm going to read you guys some of the conversation that I was having with my friend. The fans are out of line, and people associate Drake with the fans and the team as the brand ambassador, which everybody loves when it's good press. But now that it's something negative, they want to disassociate him and say he has no responsibility, when I do genuinely believe that he has been amping up the fans in a damn near toxic manner. And my friend said, I agree with the first part, but I don't think he's amping up the fans. With or without Drake, most arenas have shitty fans. That's the norm. Teams like OKC, LA, etc., they're not the norm. They have exceptional fan culture, and that has become their standard. I'm not saying the fans themselves aren't already shitty, but Drake is also participating in how shitty they are and magnifying it, in my opinion, and he's doing it in a professional capacity as global brand ambassador, not just as a regular fan. Your global brand ambassador, who's like a fucking superstar, is out here harping on people and heckling them. It sends the message to the fans that the organization is cool with this kind of behavior. My friend said, you can say that he's magnifying it because he's Drake. He's magnifying a shitty fan culture. And then he brought up another team, Utah. Utah has probably the worst fans, but no one cares because they don't have a Drake at every game. And I was like, exactly. They don't have a Drake at every game. The thing is, Toronto does have a Drake, so every game is news. And he has an official title from the team, so it's almost like this is heckling on a professional level, and that was the point of why they appointed him. Again, it was like the business move. It was almost like the business move was like that Drake is a professional troll, which we know. We've seen this from his like other beefs with like other people, right? It's almost like Drake is like a professional troll, and so he got hired to be a professional troll for the Raptors to like raise their profile. And it is working, but it's also contributing, in addition to the fans' behavior, to tarnishing the reputation of their organization, right? So it's sort of like, is all press good press kind of argument. Like, do we think that it's worth it for them to raise the profile of their team in such a manner if they're also going to be associated with this like really horrible, shitty, unsportsmanlike conduct? Which is an interesting thing to think about, because again, this is also sort of a reflection of the society that we find ourselves in at large, where like all press is good press. People be doing all type of stuff like wilding out because they just want attention, right? Like, we're in the era of like, just give me some attention. As long as I'm getting some attention, that's all I care about. And I said, I was like, Toronto never had that kind of reputation before now. Now people are actively rooting against their team because the fan base sucks. Appointing Drake that position was great from a business standpoint because he raised the profile of their brand, but now their brand is doing damage control for having a ruined reputation. They cheered when KD went down and sucker punched Golden State fans, and a bad reputation follows teams. So the question becomes, is it worth it to raise the profile of your team if you wreck your team's reputation in the process? And like, maybe Toronto has like always had shitty fans, and we just never knew it before because like their profile was never high enough, but now because of Drake it is high enough, so now it's like getting out there that they have shitty fucking fans, which also wouldn't be that surprising because people love to fucking pretend and act like people from Canada are so nice and so sweet and wonderful, but like hockey fans aren't that nice. My friend said, Drake has made the Raptors a larger market, so it's definitely worth it. It's easy to change fan culture. They could change the toxicity, but it's not easy to create a market, which they now have. Boston used to have really bad fans, and so did Detroit. Their fan base changed drastically, and they've had team success. And I said, I get that, But I do also just think it's a little hypocritical of people to say, well, Drake raised the profile of the Raptors and he is the Raptors, but now that they're in trouble, it has nothing to do with him when he played a big part in stirring up drama this series. And yes, drama is always a part of sports, but he did also play a part as well. So he gets credit for the positive and gets to sidestep the negative. That's not fair. As brand ambassador, he can also say to the fans, let's cool it. He has that power, so what is his responsibility? And basically, the last thing my friend said, which I agreed with this, my friend said he knows or has a professional relationship with the players that he's heckling. And I was like, yes, he does. The fans jeering when Durant goes down do not, but they are following Drake's example. So my friend was like, his responsibility is to publicly condemn the fan base for being shitty and to create a better fan culture. His responsibility is to be the go-between between players and fans and to say to the fans, it's okay for us to cheer for our team and maybe to even heckle the opposite team, but it's not okay to strip the players of their humanity. The shit ain't a circus. When somebody goes down, it's serious. And I agree with that. So some other comments. Aubrey himself is an out-of-control fan. Now he's their ringleader, so of course his minions are going to be out of control, which ultimately reflects poorly on the team. Drake is the Raptors at this point. That's how he markets himself. We see Drake, we think of them, and vice versa. He needs to get his people in check. What they did to KD was disgusting. Because a lot of people were saying, like, I was rooting for the Raptors, but I'm not going to root for them after this. This is unsportsmanlike conduct, and they don't even deserve it. Like, they don't even deserve the championship, and Drake needs to come get his people. And then a lot of people were saying, like, well, why does Drake need to get them? Like, what does Drake have to do with it? Which is how the conversation, like, came out of, like, well, what, as the global brand ambassador, a.k.a. the face of the team, a.k.a. being in charge with raising the profile of the team's brand, what responsibility does Drake have, if any? And again, this could be sort of applied to a larger cultural conversation around fan bases and fan culture of, do people have a responsibility to keep that shit in check? And, like, I do see both sides of the arguments, but, like, with Drake is not just, like, a regular fan. For me, that's sort of where the line got crossed. Once he got given, like, sort of this official title, now it's not just personal. He's not just a personal fan. It's professional. He's with the league in a professional capacity. I don't know if he's being paid or not, or how much, or, like, if this is, like, an endorsement thing. I have no idea. But, like, he does have an official title. And so I do think that if you're going to be officially associated with the team in this type of way, like, the team became news because you're sitting courtside at every game heckling. That does sort of send a message about that type of behavior being fine. So now that the fans are taking it to the extreme by doing stuff like cheering when Kevin Durant goes down, I do think that Drake played a part in that. Like, I absolutely do. And I do think that, again, since he's in this sort of semi-professional capacity, that there should be a portion of responsibility laid at his feet for that. And I don't think it's fair that he can sort of take credit for the positive aspects of, like, raising the profile of Toronto, but, like, be able to just sidestep now that they have this sort of negative publicity right now for having a shitty motherfucking fan culture. And I do think that there's something to be said for, like, a whack, shitty fucking fan culture affecting the way that an artist is perceived, an athlete is perceived, a team. You know, you do have, like, to consider that if you're going to be in the public. But we are also living in an era of, like, all press is good press. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with that. They're going to be like, well, people are talking about Toronto. That's all that matters. And I do ultimately feel like that since Drake is in, like, a semi-professional capacity or whatever, it is his job, because he has a title from the NBA, global brand ambassador, it's his job to encourage a healthier fan culture. Or he can retire the title and just be a regular-ass motherfucking fan like everybody else, and that would be perfectly fine too. But I do think ultimately, like, people need to start thinking a little bit more responsibly about the nature of social media and the nature of fan culture and the nature of, like, what is becoming acceptable behavior. Really interesting. I wanted to just film this so I could hear some of you guys' thoughts on it. I don't think we've, like, ever, I don't know if we've even ever have we ever even talked about sports before? Let me know what you guys think. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace. Quick addendum, which you guys know I sometimes do. I also want to add that a lot of people have been mentioning to me in some of these conversations we've been having around this, that the majority white fan base of Canada and of Toronto and of the Raptors, they feel like also plays a part in the disgusting behavior of the fans, which I also think is a really interesting point because you have a league that is primarily black, that has these white fans that really don't even see the players as human beings, which is also part of the issue that I have with like organized sports, because it's also a huge problem in the NFL as well, which we've discussed on this channel previously. So that's also a good point to consider.